Last week, we had the pleasure of talking to Jai Courtney about Semper Fi, and today we are joined by the director of said film, Henry Alex Rubin, and star Nat Wolff joining us. Guys, thanks for joining us.
Right on, man.
Good to have you, man. So it was funny, we were just talking about, we were geeking out of the fact that Sylvester Stallone put us on his Instagram. You said that something kind of similar happened to you, not Stallone, but...
No, that would be a hell of a lot cooler. No, it has nothing to do with Semper Fi, but I'm a director of commercials and PSAs in real life.
Yeah,
that's my day job, I suppose. And I was just retweeted by a bunch of political figures, which was very surreal. Biden, Warren, Kamala Harris, Beto, all reposted a little film that I made about the Sandy Hook families.
Oh yeah.
It was.
You did the one where it's like the kids going back to school. That was you?
Oh, man.
Shit, man.
Yeah.
That's a powerful piece of film work.
Nice, Josh.
Thank you. You're welcome.
When you don't know how to finish your taxes.
When you know how to finish it, but...
I'll just be over here.
Powerful piece of film.
We believe in you. Just such a work film.
The good news is I can't tell what's more red, the chair or you.
Yeah.
Well, we do have today, we have the
Is that good news?
Yeah, we have the director here, Henry Alex Rubin, and Nat Wolff. Let's talk about this movie, man, because you talk about powerful, and it's what I was thinking about, too. There's the movie Stuck in Love. Mm-hmm. Loved that film, and it was I think very underrated, to be honest with you. And you crushed it in that movie. But it was obviously there's a lot of different characters that you've played in your career already. This is very different from a role like that because you kind of dude gets himself in trouble,
right?
And because of Jai Courtney playing your brother in this particular role, hearing his perspective on it. Tell me about this particular role. Why you decided you wanted to tackle this?
I mean, I think from the moment I read the script, I was in love with the character, and then I pursued the role, and I'd been a huge fan of Henry's from Disconnect, which I actually auditioned for when I was, I think 17 or 18, and he told me I was too old. But
better than not good enough.
Yeah, that was the nice way of saying not good enough. But then I got better, and so he cast me in his second movie. But Oyster jumped off the page, and it kind of reminded me of some of my favorite characters from films like Mean Streets, Johnny Boy, Robert De Niro's character, and different characters where they had a lot of pain that was being externalized and thrown in every direction. And I remember hearing somebody say that a lot of people that get into bar fights usually, if they're brought into therapy, they realize that. They wanted to be touched, and something intimate. And something about that, I thought that was a way to, that was a real way in for me, and something that really connected me to that character. Somebody that's always, exploding, in a lot of ways, just kind of wants to be, is dying for some kind of intimacy and connection.
Yeah, and it's funny because Henry, when we had Jai in here, one of the things he said is because you guys had what he said about you, and I thought was very kind as a director, is that he would have suggestions and he'd have things, and even if you guys would have a good kind of rapport back and forth, but he trusted you because he knew the story you wanted to tell, and he also you got to be a leader, obviously, when you're a director, but straightforward, and you're working with some big personalities here, especially in this type of setting. How do you do that as a director to say to know that, because even Jai Courtney, by the way, who's like a brick shithouse at this point, the guy's huge. You don't want to piss that guy off, but when you're having a conversation, how do you do that?
He's a sweetheart, though.
Yeah, I'm sure. But how do you approach?
Which I did once or twice.
What's that?
Piss him off.
Piss him off.
For sure.
Yeah.
What happened?
But does that work for the character?
Tell us.
What happened? Yeah. Well, I kept telling him to close his eyes in relief. In one scene when he was driving, there was a camera in front of his car, and he was like, "Mate, I'm going to crash into the camera." That was a terrible imitation thing.
Nailed it. No, it's pretty good.
Got it.
But
Rise of Bloods.
But Jai's a sweetheart who's actually incredibly huge range and incredibly brilliant actor. And I was excited to give him a character that had a big range, because as an actor, you don't always get to have a character that has a lot of range. Usually you're just in a small box in a movie. So both of these guys had a big range, and they play each other's brothers or stepbrothers. But the question you asked earlier, just to say this about directing, it's like such a it's a funny thing for me. I don't come to directing in the same way. I didn't go to film school. I started out making documentaries, and in documentaries, things are always in the way, and you're always rolling. You don't learn to say cut. You start rolling, and you don't even say rolling. You just start rolling.
Right.
And there's always things in the way. There's always obstacles. The sound is always bad. You can't see people's faces because the light's not on their face. So you're always moving. You're always using a long lens zoom. And the result, though, are these little pieces of film. Some of them are unusable. Some of them are usable. But they feel real because they are real. And then so making a fiction movie, because I came from documentaries, I would always try to apply those same rules. Can we make something that feels captured? Can we let these guys talk over each other? Can we let them improvise a little bit? Can we have them make it real so that it doesn't feel like, shot, reverse shot, dialogue, Hollywood movie. I just wanted to feel, as real as a documentary, if possible.
Yeah.
And the people that I really admire are people like Ken Loach or Robert Altman or John Cassavetes, who managed to really give a lot of freedom to his actors. So even though we have a very sort of action thrillery movie, if you watch it, it feels more like a 70s movie in the sense
raw.
that it's raw.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I also love that it didn't hit us over the head with things. You left some things up to our interpretation. We do get some backstory on your character, but we're not spoon-fed exactly what happened to you. Did you guys have more conversations on set about the specifics, and then you kind of just display that in your emotion, even though it's not in the dialogue?
Yeah, I think a lot of my favorite films don't spoon feed you the the kind of easy psychology of this happened to this character and that's why they act a certain way. I think with people, we're so vast and complex. It's like it would take so many years of therapy to even start to understand what's going on with or for me, what's going on with me, and then to understand a character. Like what Henry was saying about setting up an environment where you feel free and loose. And the line gets blurred between off camera and on camera. He didn't have a bunch of set shots that you had to act in his frame. He was following you, so he kind of let us be loose in that environment. And that it takes a lot of the work out as an actor. So you do get to focus on things like the backstory and focus on things that are emotional and creative, as opposed to spending your time technically trying to satisfy a shot or a director.
You had a smaller budget on the movie, so you didn't have because Jai was telling us you didn't have a ton of time for 5 guys that were Marines together, right? And when you're in the military and you spend all that time war buddies, whatever kind of a thing. The brothership that you guys had to form in that situation, what did Henry do for you, or what did you guys do together that maybe took that besides getting drunk at awesome local bars?
Jai said he went out and got shithoused one time. Yeah.
One time? Interesting. We'll stick with that story.
Yeah, he might have said more. Speaking to him, a guy likes to smash down some pints.
No, every weekend these guys were out in the bars, and I would leave sooner than they did.
Right.
But it was a bar called Mimi's.
I couldn't really
Love that
keep up
place.
either. I think Henry and I are probably the lightweights of the group.
For sure.
But I went out with them one time, and then Jai came in my room at I went home at 2 in the morning or something. Jai came in my room at 7 in the morning playing Elliott Smith songs on my acoustic guitar. I'm like, how did you get my guitar? How did you get in my room? And why are you still awake?
Well, it's funny because I didn't know. I obviously knew that you've been playing music, your dad, and everything too. But I didn't know that Jai was a musician until that interview last time too. So is that another way that you guys bonded a little bit more?
Totally. Yeah, we had a lot of the same music tastes. I didn't know he was a musician either. But he's a real sensitive artist in that beautiful body.
Why do you say he's a sensitive artist?
Because he is. He's just a sensitive. I mean, he's a sensitive guy. And I tend to get along better with more sensitive people.
So you guys were in Mimi's, which is a local place in Louisiana, right? So were a lot of the locals kind of. Because, local bars can be tough. I've been to Venice bars here in L.A. where, it's like a local, and that's here in California. Louisiana, a little tougher.
I think probably
Yeah, they were-
starstruck, if anything.
Yeah.
No, they had no idea who anybody was. These guys were
Really?
just super.
Except for Arturo from Broad City. There's a lot of people, and And he would be like, and he would always say he could go. He said, but isn't my voice lower on Narcos? He would always do like a lower voice when they would come up to him and sort of like do the back and forth. But no, I mean the New Orleans. I mean, have you guys been?
Yes.
Yeah, it's my whole family's down there. My dad's whole side of the family's down there. So I grew up going. My dad grew up there, so I grew up there every Thanksgiving and during summers and stuff. So it's one of my favorite places on earth.
It makes sense too, being a jazz musician down in New Orleans.
Yeah,
man,
totally.
for
It's
sure.
in his blood.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I also didn't know. I didn't realize. I knew your dad was a musician, but I didn't realize he was the lead guy for Arsenio.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And that's how my parents met. My mom was on the show 30-something. She's an actress, and she came on the show. And my dad came into hair and makeup and started hitting on her. And then my mom was like, does he do this with all the actresses? And the hair and makeup lady was like, he's actually never been in here in the 4 years he's been doing the show. This is the first time. And he just had this huge crush on her. And
that's cool, man. That's really cool.
Have you ever been to the Maple Leaf in New Orleans? Like that's the ultimate.
Oh my God, amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Without giving spoilers, I will say that, and by the way, I don't think I've said it yet, I love this movie. I thought you guys did such an amazing job with it. The ending left me conflicted because I loved it, but I felt this thing inside like, what is next? What happens next? And again, I don't want to spoil it, but do you guys consider this a happy ending?
The best movies for me that I remember leave me emotional and wanting a little bit more, but yet satisfied, yet emotional. Satisfied plot-wise, but emotional. The ending of, for example, Deer Hunter. It doesn't all end up great, but
it kind of reminded me like
but you're moved at the end, and you're moved by their love for each other. I'm hoping that this is a satisfying ending. One of the
It
things
was very satisfying. I just felt like
I
curious.
agree with you. I feel the same. Yeah.
It was.
well, we may need a sequel then.
Yeah.
Two.
Semper Fi again.
Kind of what I was getting at a little bit.
Semper Fi,
honestly.
even
One of the-
crazier.
One of the most
Back at
unique
it.
reactions.
Also, I wanted to ask you because going back to a story that Nat, you just told when you went into auditions, this is a story actors have all the time. Right? They go in, they think that they have it. It's like, oh man, I nailed that. You're too old, and damn it, especially. But you have this relationship. Obviously, there was something that when he came in there, he stuck in your mind. You said you pursued the role also, Nat, which I also wanted to kind of go into. But when he comes back and he wants this role as a director, does that say, okay, this kid's pursuing this thing? Plus, I remember him from when he came in.
Well, he was on my map since he came in, and then he did this movie called Palo Alto.
Oh, yeah.
where
Great
I mean,
film.
he's just his performance is hilarious, on fire in that movie. It's to me the most memorable thing in the film is Nat's character in that film, and yes, he did pursue this. He did read it early. He was the first actor attached to this film, and so. Yes, thank God, because I don't think we would have made it. Every indie movie is an uphill battle, but you need, it's pushing a rock up the hill, and he pushed it the first few feet was him.
Was Oyster the first character? Like when you read the script, was Oyster the character you were going for? Was it pitched to you as your Oyster, or were there other characters? Because you got your 5 main guys in there, and everybody's
ages.
yeah.
Actually, I think that's really interesting. I think when I was sent the script, it had all the parts, but I mean, I could read that script 10 years ago or 10 years from now, and I would want to play Oyster.
Okay.
Part is. I mean, on the script, I was like, and a lot of actors that I knew were it was a real boon to get that part.
I think like the most powerful part of the movie is your time in prison. At least that's the one that like stuck with me the most. Like really made me feel pretty sick inside. Were there other like prison movies you would watch? Because it reminded me a little bit of When They See Us, like what those guys had to do.
My God,
I
yeah.
know, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you had any kind of like inspiration for that, or if you just wanted to go in your own dark place while you were there, because it's tough.
I watched a lot of documentaries on being in prison, and there's some really great performances. Like, have you ever seen In the Name of the Father?
Yeah.
Yeah, with Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah,
That's a
incredible.
pretty great movie. Like when they come find him there, and he's been up, all night. When they first get him in the jail, I mean, that's like the most horrifying scene I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But I watched. There was also a lot of movies. I think what I connected to in the script was the idea of brotherhood and then the relationship between the brothers and the friends. And so I watched Deer Hunter. And, watched a lot of movies in that area. But I really felt like those jail scenes were also a time where, you know, up until then, Oyster has his he's doing his shtick, you know, and then when you get into the jail, it's like it's been beaten out of him, sort of, and especially in that second jail scene, you know, the facade is gone, and he is, I mean, he's like broken. So that was, I mean, I find that with a lot of scripts, especially, you know, with a lot of scripts, you on the page you get one note, and in this script you really had, which made it a challenge, but also made me like, you know, want to die to do it. Is that there was just a lot of levels to it.
Well, it helped that it was a real jail, working, functioning. Wow. They just would clear out sections as we moved to it. They would clear out the inmates. Wow. It also helped that most of those guys were in there with you were ex-cons. I'm not sure if I told you that.
No, yeah, I know, yeah.
And so it's a bit of anxiety when you're in a room with a bunch of guys who have killed people.
Right.
Well, they're out now.
Most of the actors, you're saying?
I would say almost all of them.
Yeah. Well, that's a question I have for you, Henry, because how do you find as a balance for a director? Because this is something I'm always curious about. I know different processes here, but so you're working with someone like Nat, where he's got to be in this circumstance in prison. You know, you got to take him to a dark place, and you know you want to get that out of him. But you also want to protect him in general, like mentally, right? Because you want to
and physically.
But like, so how do you? Where's the balance of saying, okay, I want to try to get as much out of him as I can to make sure, like you said, raw, gritty, real, but you also want to protect your actor. What's the process there?
So okay, well the thing is, I'm just gonna spoil it myself because the trailer does. But what ends up happening is that his big brother is like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna break him out of jail," and so you have to understand what's going down with him. You also have to see what he did wrong, and you have to make your own decision about how long does this guy really deserve to be in jail for what went down in that bathroom stall. And so you have to get the audience on his side. And I think if in the beginning of the film you're a bit frustrated by him, or you think he's a bit of a loose cannon who after a while your heart goes after him. There's a transformation within the audience, I think, watching this character. In the beginning, you may not like him so much, but you turn at one point. I'm not sure where that point is, but we were conscious of that, Sean, the writer, and I. Where do you start? Where does your heart go out to him? And a lot of those jail scenes helped you turn. That's not to say that he's not charming up front. We were hoping he would be charming enough that you'd forgive him for his foibles. But the jail scenes were meant to make you be on his side and want him to get out of that jail.
Right, because his persona's just not supposed to be there.
And in terms of shooting them, Henry, that's what makes Henry really brilliant, is he really, I mean, you couldn't even see that.
Well, the movie, guys, once again, you're watching live or listening on the replay, it's Semper Fi. It is in theaters, it's on demand and digital, October 4th, 2019. That's this year. You know that. It's right around the corner. Henry, Alex Rubin, the director, and Nat Wolff are here talking the movie. Roxy, you had something else you were about to ask? I thought you were. Sorry.
I actually wanted to go back because I think a while ago you were saying one of the most interesting reactions that you got, and then maybe we turned away. Did you get a crazy reaction to something?
Oh, I was just saying we've just begun showing it to people, but we've got a lot of people telling us, "Hey, I cried at the end." And,
interesting.
And I that's not something we were expecting. You know, this just seems like it's being sold. Certainly, it has to be sold as an action thriller movie, but it has a lot of heart, and a lot of that is due to Jai and Jai's vulnerability and his vulnerability. They really put it all out there. I mean, it's almost like more of a drama and an emotional experience, and so maybe that's why we've met people who have been very moved at the end, and so that's been exciting. You know, because that's what you hope for as making a movie, is that you move somebody.
Right.
You don't just like give them a little bit of excitement, but you move them.
You have it's an ensemble cast. Each person kind of has their own storyline, which I think is really tough in a script like this, because your main story is getting you out of jail,
right?
Whereas every person has their own like kind of inner demons, and I think, at least when I got emotional, I'm not going to spoil anything, is how each person reacted to the situation.
Me too.
At the end, right? It was impressive. It was really cool.
Going back to the ensemble for a second, an actress I've been a huge fan of for a really long time, who I don't feel like has even shown us a quarter of what she can do yet, is Leighton Meester. I thought she was incredible in this. Can you talk about working with her and her casting process? I know she was in the like YA scene for so long that doing something like this, I feel like, is exactly where her career should be going.
Yeah, she's brilliant and, like you said, underappreciated actress. And I was very interested in her. It was actually Corinna Miller, our producer, who was a fan of hers. So was Sarah Mitchler, our co-producer, had seen that show Gossip Girl, and they were both like, "What about Leighton Meester?" And I had to be educated about her, and I saw a few things she was in. I saw this movie called Country Strong, which is one of Sarah's favorite movies. It's a country movie.
Oh yeah, I know
we
Country
know
Strong.
Country
Yeah.
Strong.
Sarah is also Henry's love.
Love of my life.
Yeah.
So when the love of your life tells you to look at something, you're like, okay. So I don't like country music necessarily. I don't dislike it, but I watched this movie to watch her, and I saw a whole different side of her in that movie than from Gossip Girl. And then she was kind enough and humble enough to come in and audition, which you don't necessarily need to do that if you're Leighton Meester, but she's incredibly humble. She came in and she just crushed the audition, and after that it was a no-brainer. She had to be in this, and we moved things around to make sure it was her. And then also she had a lot of chemistry with Finn Wittrock, who's in this film, and
Another superstar.
another superstar. And Finn, who is also just a natural, he has a whole subplot in this film, which was inspired by when I was making a long time ago when I was making a documentary called Murder Ball. We went to Walter Reed and we met a lot of returning war vets, and some of them had lost limbs, some of them had had traumatic brain injuries, and there was a whole storyline in Semper Fi that comes right out of the truth of some of those interviews from back then.
You would have got nominated for an Oscar for Murderball, didn't you?
Yes, I lost to a movie about penguins.
Bastards.
It
Never
sucks
look
to
at another
lose.
penguin,
Yeah, it
yeah.
sucks to lose to penguins.
One other thing
Goddamn
before we let you guys go, Henry, you had mentioned a lot of both guys mentioned whether it was Deer Hunter or I think some of you guys Mean Streets and bringing up Scorsese. One of the things that Scorsese does a lot, whether it's working with De Niro or DiCaprio, as you move forward in your directing career, is that something that you want to do to where you want to have a lot of the actors that you like to use again and again and again, or is it sometimes where you like to find new pieces, or a little bit of mixture of both?
Yes, if only I could just do that.
Which one?
Which one?
Work with actors I know and love. I mean,
We're
there's
trying to find something.
nothing would be more. Nothing would be more. I mean,
Right?
we are. I would go further than that. I would just go. I would take this as a jumping point. This movie is about brotherhood.
Yeah.
It's about loyalty.
Yeah.
The movie is called Semper Fi, which means Semper Fidelis, which means always faithful. Right? You guys all know that's the motto for the U.S. Marines. In life, it's very rare to find a friend who is always faithful to you. Most people talk shit. Most people backstab. Most people, change like the wind. Even sometimes people you've known a decade or more. So to have that kind of bond, that kind of love, that kind of selflessness.
Yeah.
That's what this movie is about. That's why Sean and I, the co-writer that's made this movie, we wanted to celebrate that kind of friendship.
Right.
The people who play on sports teams or go off to war and brave bullets together. That's rare to see in this day and age. Everything's so cutthroat and backstabby.
You almost kind of feel jealous of their friendship. Like when I'm watching, I'm like, damn it.
But yeah, no, but
I don't want friends like that.
I want to go back to that though, because I happen to agree with you. I think you're 100% right. And even though the movie, where Benedict Cumberbatch was playing Julian Assange, and he says inside of it, he says that people are loyal until it's opportunistic not to be. And
You've literally had this conversation with me so many times. Like he just took the words from your mouth.
Yeah,
and
no,
said
when
it
he
out
said that,
loud.
but you're
Yeah.
right though. But there are certain people, and I have said this to you also, that when you know that people are loyal, and plus it helps you creatively, right? To know that because you've now worked with Nat, and it's like, wait a minute, I know that I can rely on him to do this, and creatively now I know that I know that what he can do. I know what he's going to do for my project. I know what he can do. The conversation I have, and I know he's a good dude. So I think that Adam Sandler's done that through his career. Whatever you think about his movies, he's kept people around him that he trusts and
Kevin Smith.
that he loves. And I think that is a lot of times it's probably good for the creative process.
It's incredibly good for the soul too,
Yeah.
because life is tough to live, whether you're well off or not. And so surrounding yourself with your friends and having your friends on your crew every time. I mean, I'm my day job is I direct commercials, and I have the same people on production after production, and it doesn't feel like work because you're just hanging with your friends.
Right.
But getting back to him, this is one of the most brilliant young actors I've ever worked with, bar none. And I know that like directors will always hype their actors, but you know, this guy, working with him was like watching a very young, raw, like DiCaprio and Gilbert Grape, or watching De Niro in Mean Streets.
Heavy praise, man.
Just like the guy's like vibrating. He's just electric. You can't, when he comes in, you can't stop looking at him. And that's exciting. So you always know he's going to uplift something. There's one clip that I don't think we're allowed to show because it's so laden with curses, but it's when he and his brother meet in jail, and there's oceans of resentment, and they just go at it. And most of it was improvised. Like you were asking, did they get into their characters? Did they learn who their characters were, have a backstory? Very much so. So much that they could throw shit at each other, insults, and cut each other down with things that Sean and I didn't even write. And that scene is, that scene's precious.
Well, does some of that stuff come out of the bars when you guys are out of the bars? And, I'm serious because of the drinking. And I also wonder if you get out of there, that because of what the characters are, I'd be nervous as a director. These guys are so into it; they're going to wind up beating people up at the bar when I leave. But do you kind of come up with those conversations at the bar?
Well, I know that I'm someone, and I think these characters are similar to me in the way that it's really hard if I don't care about you to aggravate me or to really upset me. But if I trust, it's the same thing. If I trust somebody or love somebody, it's the emotional stakes are heightened, tenfold. And I think when it comes to brothers, that relationship, and I obviously, have a really intense, beautiful relationship with my brother, but that has gone through its, has been complicated and what you realize is when you truly love somebody and truly care about them, you also have such an ability to hurt them. You know, and I felt like the guilt and the shame and the blame that were in those jail scenes it was an uncomfortable. There were uncomfortable feelings to dredge up. But at the same time, it was actually kind of cathartic, which I don't feel on every film. But this movie was a little bit like it felt, and there was a lot of the character was kind of some of my shadow side. It's a side that I keep hidden because it's not socially acceptable. And I have to be the Nat that that we all do. But there's always that kind of. Like you were saying, that one scene of the primal animal in me, and so
there's a scene where he gets arrested where I just asked him to become a primal, and he does it, and it's very touching to watch because you see a lot of people getting arrested in movies and TV, but I've never seen this kind of pain, that howling wolf-like howling pain that comes out when you're probably going to go away for a long time.
But it's a great direction because And in a certain way, then I leave the movie lighter and more open.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you. Once again, we could talk to you for another hour, which we could. The movie Semper Fi, it's in theaters and on demand and digital October 4th. Make sure you check that movie out. Henry Alex Rubin and Nat Wolff, guys, thank you for joining us today.
So
really
much,
appreciate it.
man.
Thank you very much. Thank you.